All right, next up we have Hunter, starting with Wing Commander Eichmann, which if you didn't know, Mulverick and Eichmann, the Wing Commanders, are clearly references to Top Gun. Anyway, there's supposed to be a Top Gun. When did the Top Gun like remake or sequel? Or it's not a remake. The sequel come out. I don't know. I used to live in Oceanside, California, and there was the Top Gun house, which was the house that was like on the beach that he like rides his motorcycle up to. It was like a historic landmark there. They actually couldn't build a hotel on this like beachfront property because the house was there, because it was a it was a historic landmark. So ultimately, they actually built a hotel. They moved the house like on like a whatever giant, I don't know, moving platform thing, giant machinery, and then they built the foundation for the hotel and moved the house inside the hotel. It's like in the hotel lobby as a historic landmark. The more you know. Anyway, 9-cost minion. Battlecry, summon a beast from your deck and give it rush. If it kills a minion this turn, repeat. So this is, it's a very, very expensive card, obviously. 9 cost in a hunter deck is tough to justify, and it feels like you need to have a lot of big minions, and preferably, big minions that can actually keep you alive, big beasts specifically. We did see, this sort of style of deck in like Katarina, back in Goblin vs. Gnomes, where you'd play a bunch of like cheap stuff that is not beasts, and then just play like big beasts. And maybe you can build something like this with maybe just play King Crush to potentially kill your opponent, because you can actually like attack their face and blow them up, but you could just play your King Crush anyway. Maybe you somehow like put a bunch of King Crushes in your deck. I don't know. I don't really know. But ultimately you want this to just keep getting gigantic minions out of your deck, and you want them to be big enough to kill something in your opponent's side of the board. So you need your opponent to have stuff on their board, which is a dangerous position for Hunter to be in, because you don't really keep yourself alive very well outside of like trying to kill your opponent's minions. So I'm pretty skeptical of this card in general. But of course, if there are like big beasts with like taunt or like death rattle effects or whatever, maybe this can end up being powerful. But it's something that encourages a play pattern that is very difficult for Hunter to really achieve in a lot of matchups, which makes me somewhat skeptical of it really being able to be that effective. That said, anything that's like something like tutor your deck for a thing, like if there's some sort of combination of beasts that like can just end the game on the spot, that is something to very much be aware of. And in a matchup where you do fall like behind like small minions, this could be like insanely powerful. If there's a deck that like somehow on like, I don't know, turn 8 is when it like swarms the board with a bunch of stuff, this could like, and you just have like a bunch of gigantic minions in your deck, you can like use this to make a bunch of things, kill all their stuff, and just get them. But yeah, it is of course worth noting that there are things that can like add additional copies of stuff to your deck. So one thing that's interesting to note, by the way, is that this, if it kills a minion this turn, repeat, because it's not like a trigger. So if you can do things in between, right? Like maybe this does cost 9, so it's difficult to do much else in between, and there's not really like cost reduction in Hunter. But if you could like put more copies of stuff in your deck, right? Like you could theoretically, like if you got this cost reduced, or you got like a Dire Frenzy cost reduced, right? You could like Dire Frenzy a beast that came off of this and put more of them into your deck and keep getting them out of there. It's not really a thing that like is doable with Hunter's card pool that I can at least think of, but it is possible, right? Like you could like North Shore Farm or something, things like that, which is not particularly exciting with this. But if you have maybe you just like keep putting boars in your deck, and your opponent has a bunch of 1/1s, and you finally get the sort of 1,000 truths. Regardless, I think it is very unlikely that this is a particularly impactful card. It requires really specific circumstances, both in terms of the game and in terms of deck construction, which makes me pretty skeptical of it. But it is something that can, with the right combination of things, have the possibility of being extremely powerful. All right, speaking of beasts with taunt, we have Mountain Bear, a 7-cost 5/6 beast with taunt and death rattle. Summon 2/4 cubs with taunt. This is like the sludgiest of Belchers here, and this is a card that you don't really see very much in Hunter. The style card you don't really see very much in Hunter, which is a beast that can actually defend you. Most stuff that you see in Hunter tends to be go face, go face, go face. This is not that. This is, in fact, a pile of defensive stats, which, again, is not really something that tends to be what you see out of Hunter. I do think that In order for Hunter to be able to play a longer game, you do need cards like this that actually do that. You know, when you did play, see like mid-range Hunter back in the OG Hearthstone days, you know you saw a lot of them with Sludge Belchers because Sludge Belcher was such a good card at keeping you alive. This is a bonus Belcher. You get two 4 taunts, but it costs 7, which is a lot of mana, especially in Hunter World. So this does seem like it could be pretty challenging to to build a deck where this is a good card, because you do sort of struggle in the early to mid turns regardless, and getting to 7 there. But in a world where you are trying to play a slower, like either beast based or death rattle based or whatever Hunter deck, this does feel like it has the potential to really keep you alive, at least against attacking minions. But we've talked quite a bit. Any kind of slower strategy in the standard metagame, alongside stuff like the Warlock quest and the Mage quest, is really going to struggle to need to end the game before those things can just kind of take over. And a Hunter deck, yes, you can hero power them down, but if your deck is full of big expensive stuff like this, it is perhaps much less likely that you can actually kill them before they're capable of ending the game, and not care about the fact that you have little taunted cubs. Next up, we have Ice Trap. I think this card is very cool. Ice Trap gives you a way to interact with things that are not on the board as a hunter. I was just talking about how hunters can struggle against decks that you're not just killing quickly. This can at least slow them down, but that's all it does, is slow them down. Doesn't really give you the ability to stop them from doing their thing. Hunter, of course, with its hero power and with the selection of tools that you typically have at your disposal, can really take advantage of slowing people down, but doesn't really give you the sort of freedom to play a truly slow deck, again, in sort of a world that we do live in currently. This is, I think, more than anything, likely to be a powerful disruptive tool for a mid-range to aggressive hunter deck, in order to stop your opponent from, say, flame striking you. Problem being, of course, that most of the stuff that you actually see, at least right now, in terms of removal of spells coming from a lot of these decks, are extremely cheap, right? If you ice trap a flurry, that doesn't do that much. We're not really living in a world where people are flame striking your stuff very often. We're playing in a world where people are just kind of interfering with what you're trying to do with extremely cheap things, whether those things are flurries or brain freezes or touch of the Nathrazems, things that are quite inexpensive in general. You could even, I guess you can't really have this hit like you could have something hit like a Tamsin spell that was reduced to 1 with another Tamsin, but they'd have to, unless the Tamsin was still in play, they couldn't just keep doing it. And they couldn't keep doing it anyway because you're going to get returned once. Regardless, I just think that this is good in a world where there's a bunch of expensive spells. The most expensive spell you typically see out of a lot of the decks these days is like Soul Rend, right? And yes, in a world where you get a good start and you ice trap your opponent's Soul Rend, that's devastatingly powerful. So I do think that this is something that can be good in the right context. But I think more than anything, we live in a world that has tons of cheap spells rather than individual expensive spells that tend to be used. Which makes this feel much, much less impactful than otherwise could be. Maybe this is great at just stopping a Cloak of Concealment or whatever that one is. I think it's Cloak of Concealment. The draw 2, they get stealth out of Rogue. That's good, But for a lot of the sort of interactive stuff, again, they tend to be cheap things, which is much, much less effective. It is great at stopping the card draw, because the card draw is the most expensive thing in a lot of these decks, like the Arcane Intellects, the Refreshing Spring Waters. It's great there, because they actually don't get the mana refunded unless it actually resolves. But for the interactive cards, which is usually what I feel like you're more likely to care about with this, it does feel like it could be difficult to use in a lot of those situations. But yeah, great at I think defending a proactive board, not great at stopping your opponent from actually winning the game. Except we have Ram Tamer. It's a 3-cost 4/3 Battlecry if you control a secret game +1/+1 in stealth. So this is a great card to protect with your ice trap, right? You're playing a proactive secret deck. Boom, 5-cost, or rather 5-power stealth minion, and your opponent plays an AOE to stop it. Nope, get you for 5 at least. Oh, you want to replay that? Okay, well maybe I played another ice trap and got you real good. I do feel like this and ice trap, do give you some very powerful proactive tools for a secret-oriented hunter deck, and that feels like it has the right combination of stuff to be able to potentially be effective if the metagame does look like it does right now, which is pretty fast slash full of a lot of stuff that you need to end the game against fairly quickly. I feel like stuff like Freeze Trap or Ice Trap rather is like pretty bad in like a slow deck or a slow metagame. Pretty good if you're buying time to close the game before your opponent can do it themselves or can answer your stuff. And that combined with something like this, just a very efficient, aggressive minion that's difficult for your opponent to deal with, I think is a powerful combination that can be very effective. Next up, we have Spring the Trap. 4-cost spell, deal 3 to a minion and cast a secret from your deck. Honorable Kill, cast 2. So another card that obviously very heavily can power up a secret deck. Obviously, if your opponent has a 3 health minion, it can be very, very strong, right? You get to kill their thing and cast 2 secrets for 4 mana. I think in particular, this is very powerful against the Defias Cannoneer, which is one of the strongest cards in the Quest Warrior decks that are popular right now. One of the big problems here is that this is a very bad card against a deck that does not have minions. And a lot of the secrets, are very weak against creatureless type decks. So, against like Quest Warlock / Quest Mage, this is pretty useless. And, again, those have not necessarily had like a tremendous metagame share recently, but if the metagame does slow down, as seems to be at least somewhat of the intention of Alterac Valley, which, by the way, is very thematically appropriate. I don't know how many of you played Alterac Valley back in the day, like in actual World of Warcraft, which and it's back with Classic and whatnot. But I would have days where like I would start playing some Alterac Valley when I went to work, come back and like the same game was going when I got home 8 hours later or whatever. Alterac Valley was a slow metagame, but it didn't have quests in it, so it got to be slow, and you wouldn't come home and then your entire team was fatigued to death by Tamsin or whatever. But yeah, overall, I think that one thing that you could potentially use this in like against like creatureless decks, maybe you Spring the Trap on your own minions to like cast secrets. Seems extremely inefficient, especially considering many of the secrets are going to be useless in those matchups unless you just get Ice Trap type things. Regardless, I do think that in minion-based matchups, this seems like it could be extremely powerful, especially if you can use stuff like Wound Prey or whatever to make it more likely you actually hit the honorable kill, because getting 2 secrets and killing a minion, extremely powerful. So in the right metagame context, it does seem great, but tough metagame context to find given how things look right now. All right, next up we have Beast Stalker Tavish. Speaking of things that work with secrets, this is interestingly, like, this is a card that gives you secrets, doesn't care if you have secrets, just works with stuff that, may have secret synergies. So Battlecry, Discovering Cast 2 Improved Secrets. The Improved Secrets are upgraded versions of the secrets that do exist in Standard. I don't have images of them or anything here, but stuff like upgraded Explosive Trap deals more damage. There's upgraded Ice Trap, costs more to replay. Same with Freezing Trap. So essentially just like more things, slightly more powerful versions of the secrets that do exist in Standard. But perhaps more importantly, the hero power. Summon Animal Companion. So you can just get so many Huffers and kill your opponent. But this doesn't necessarily care too much about what like version of Hunter it goes in, because neither of the Battlecry nor the hero power are contingent on the rest of what your deck is doing. I expect it to be more likely to end up in like mid-range or slower Hunter decks rather than Face Hunter, in part because you're much more likely to, care about the secrets if you care about your opponent attacking you, because so many of the secrets that do exist are things that are more defensively oriented, like the Freezing Traps and the Explosive Traps, Snake Traps of the world. And also, why would you want to replace Smork with Sometimes Smork as a hero power? So I would expect this to go, again, in slower Hunter decks that give you the ability to keep making dudes instead of just shooting your opponent. Very, very powerful. The hero power, I think, is the real highlight of this. Being able to cast Animal Companion every single turn is very good. Difficult for someone to grind down when you can keep buffering them or keep Leoking to buff the rest of your board or keep Mishing to protect yourself. Just really, really good hero power. So I do think this is going to be a kind of mid-range Hunter staple, but would not expect it to see play in like face Hunter decks. All right, next up we have Revive Pet. 3-cost spell, nature spell, if that matters. Discover a friendly beast that died this game, summon it. So this, can be potentially real strong if you do get, big beasts in play, like obviously the Mama Bear we saw at the beginning. You could theoretically use a bunch of Revive Pets after you King Crush someone and kill them with a bunch of King Crushes that you put back into play and kill your opponent. Because it is a discover effect. Crucially, it's not random, so you can play this with like smaller beasts in your deck and with Animal Companion, Wound Prey sort of things. But you wouldn't want to play too many of them in order to dilute your pool for the Revive Pet. You could actually just keep getting Huffer. Your opponent like finally you Huffer them and they're like, always Huffer, and you're like, yeah, it is, and you just revive Huffer, which is I think really appropriate. Make sure that they never survive the 4/2 charges coming in at them because they never end. But yeah, obviously at its best with like large high impact beasts. We were talking about how you could potentially use the Wing Commander Eichmann, Iceman. He's Iceman is what he really is. But I don't know how the actual word is supposed to be pronounced in the name. To like just have a big beast deck that puts big beasts into play. Okay, you revive those from this. Go. But again, crucially, discover effect, not a random effect. So if you do get like hexed, you don't have to worry about like accidentally bringing back a frog. And you still can use some of the cards that do generate beasts that aren't your just gigantic things that you're including in your deck itself. So does need. I feel like this is the sort of thing that obviously wants to really have a slower metagame. Maybe there's things like there was like Witchwood Grizzly, back in the day, that was really good if you did get it from your deck or if you revived it. I can't think of any cards immediately off the top of my head like that exist in Standard right now, but this is the sort of thing that's worth sort of keeping your eyes open for, thanks to there being a resurrect effect in Hunter. Next up, we have Storm Pike Battle Ram, a 4-cost rush. With Death Rattle, your next beast costs 2 less. Obviously, another card that can go into a larger beast deck. And there could be some sort of synergistic, like, Death Rattle beast deck, right? With the Battle Ram plus the, the Matriarch, there are a lot of pretty solid Death Rattle type tools that already exist. This is actually also, this being a rush minion does mean you could play it with, like, Diving Griffin. And be able to actually pull this out of your deck, get more of them. Diving Griffin is itself a beast, so you get even like Battle Ram, 1-cost Griffin, drawing another Battle Ram. Oh, everything's discounted. But yeah, this does make something like the Mama Bear that we saw earlier, much more realistic to include. You rush something down with your Battle Ram, play your 7-cost on 5, boom. Again, crucial to note that this does not. This carries over across turns, so you can use that cost reduction not just this turn, it's wherever, and that is as I repeatedly mention, anything that does reduce cost is something that's very much worth keeping an eye on. Certainly something that I think has potential. Again, all these caveats surrounding, how realistic is it to play like a slower deck that's just looking to play large minions in a world where people can kill minions or freeze minions so easily and then ignore them while killing you with quest rewards. Unclear, but certainly a direction that Hunter seems to be getting support for in this set. Next up, we have Bloodseeker. It's a 2-cost 2/2 weapon with honorable kill, gain +1/+1. So, obviously, much like any of the honorable kill cards, this is the sort of thing that really wants to be in a deck and in a metagame where there's a significant number of minions that line up to allow you to actually honorable kill. In particular, in the early game, obviously a cheap weapon that can kill an opposing minion can be very, very valuable in Hunter, and obviously one that doesn't actually take durability to do so. If you get aerial to get the honorable kill off, can be extremely effective. This is, I think, by itself, just in a Hunter deck, this is a 2/2 weapon, not terrible, right? Hunter does really enjoy having both early game interaction to be able to claim the board, as well as just the damage that you get from a cheap weapon can be very valuable in racing people down. There's a lot of ways in Hunter like Wound Prey, or Kolkar Pack Run or whatever that can generate things that can more easily allow you to honorable kill larger minions. So I do think that there is more potential in this than you might otherwise think just at a glance, in terms of actually getting value off of the honorable kill effect. So yeah, I mean, I think this is, just a kind of a solid card, not likely to be super amazing, especially considering Hunter can't like keep attacking things with its face and keep getting stacks on this without just dying because you don't really have armor or healing. So just overall, I think this is a solid card that's pretty likely to see a lot of play in any kind of even like mid-range Hunter deck. I could see this seeing play, as well as in face Hunter, because, well, it's just damage that goes to the face. Next up, we have Dun Baldar Bunker, a 2-cost spell, one of the persistent spells. At the end of your turn, draw a secret and set its cost to 1. Last 3 turns. This is card draw in Hunter, which is something that does not come super easily, super often. And this is obviously slow, and in a lot of Hunter decks, spending your turns doing things that don't immediately impact the board can be rough. But you keep getting secrets that keep costing 1. It's effectively draw 3 secrets with reduced cost over the course of 3 turns. I think it's quite powerful. Obviously, it's this card, I think, in a lot of the persistent cards, are pretty weak if you don't play them like on curve. If you like draw this like turn 7, you don't even get the secret to play immediately. This is a card draw card that you draw that like draws you cards several turns later. But this does seem like a pretty powerful effect if you do just play this turn 2. If you're playing it, a deck with a bunch of secrets, sometimes you don't want to play a secret in turn 2. Especially if you're looking to turn on like your Ram Handler, whatever that card is. And if you want to give yourself an opportunity to reload, this is a very effective way to do so. And it also it gives you the cost reduction. So playing this on 2 allows you to play 2 secrets on 3, because if you already had one in your hand, you could play a secret and then play another one off of this, which is very powerful. Also, obviously, much more effective at allowing you to get these synergies online, because it does reduce their cost to 1 as well. So you could potentially play your secret and then be able to play, say, your Ram Handler without the possibility of your opponent actually disrupting your secret before you get the trigger off. So I think that this is just a pretty solid card for that style of deck. If you are playing like a secret heavy deck, it is worth noting that if you are playing like, say, this and the honorable kill, get your secrets out of your deck, you may just end up with too many things that actually get secrets out of your deck, and you just run out of secrets, because how many good secrets are there for you to play in that kind of deck? So that may be just a deck building constraint as to whether this card ends up being good enough to play, or whether that card ends up being good enough to play, because it can be difficult to just pile all of them into one deck, and then what do you actually have left to win the game with, right? A lot of the secrets are pretty low impact, but that means that if you're spending 1 card to draw 3 of them, that can obviously really help you out there. So all the more reason to play Tavish in your deck, which you're more likely to draw if you're thinning your deck of secrets, to just give you endless animal companions to win the game. So I do think that despite this card looking very slow, it does feel like if the metagame is like more mid-rangey, that it could be pretty powerful. I do think that if the metagame is too fast, this card might be too slow. If the metagame is too controlling, this card might be like too low impact, just in terms of like a lot of secrets don't do that much. And if the metagame is too quest oriented, well, the secrets don't matter. So you kind of need a sweet spot, I think, of having a fairly mid-rangey format, I think, for this to be a good card, which may make it not likely to see that much play, but I do feel like there's a decent amount of the secret support here, and this feels like a good card in that kind of deck. Anyway, that was our final Hunter card from the set. Overall, I do feel like the sort of Death Rattle big beast type stuff does feel like a direction that maybe there's enough support for. We'll certainly want to look at the neutrals to see if there's good things to help support that direction. I feel like from what we've seen, just in Hunter specifically, Ikman does not seem like it's likely to have quite enough support. But I do feel like the Ram Mount and Mama Bear do feel like they're at least putting Hunter in a direction that could have some viability in the right metagame context. Tavish, I do feel like it's kind of more of like a general workhorse type card for any kind of like mid-range to slower Hunter deck that wants more of a value-oriented hero power than just blowing their opponent up. There's a lot of life gain out there, and just 2 at a time is frequently not going to be good enough. You need to send your Huffers in to actually end the game. So right now, my guess is that the best hunter decks will still be just aggressive hunter decks, and maybe you see like Ice Trap played in some of those in order to support them. If there are less interactive, less board interactive, more spell based decks that you're looking to slow down and give you enough time to kill, but that might just be kind of a trap rather than just playing more cards that just you can effectively use and proactively smash your opponent's face in, as is Hunter's way and has been for so long. Smork. All right, now we are at Mage, and our first card for Mage is Shivering Sorceress. I remember a time when a neutral 1-cost 2/2 blew people's minds, right? Like it's just a 2/2 minion, period. Like Enchanted Raven came out in like Karazhan. People were like, oh my god, a 2/2 for 1 with no ability. It is a beast. That is kind of an ability, especially when Mark of Yashar existed, but that's not really the point. It's a 1/1, or rather 1-cost 2/2 with an ability. And the ability reduce the cost of the highest cost spell in your hand by 1. So not only is it an ability, it's a super good ability. It's cost reduction. So this card is sweet, and it's interesting because the question is like, okay, what deck wants this, right? I think it's pretty clearly powerful because, well, 2/2 for 1, but a lot of Mage decks don't really care necessarily about having early game minions. They're like mostly looking to control the board with spells or whatever early on. Looking to like AoE, but like the AoE, the cheapest AoE now is like Fire Sale at 4. And even just like playing this and getting some minion removal with it, or attacking this into an opposing thing, getting some damage in with it can be valuable. But yeah, I mean, this could even be used like in decks with mostly cheap spells to reduce your cheap spells to even cheaper, because it's not like reduce the cost of a spell 5 or greater or whatever, like some of the things. But overall, I think this is just a very, very powerful card. You could play like a Tempo Mage style deck that plays this as your early game pressure and gives you cost reduction on whatever your most expensive card is. Maybe it's a Fireball, maybe it's the Arcane Overflow, to allow you to actually get your more expensive spells in cheaper. This could even be played in a like big spell control deck to allow you to play your big spells faster and give you a little bit of early game board presence. This can be used in, say, that same sort of like big spell deck alongside, say, a Wand Thief as a cheap way to enable the combo and allow you to actually have more flexibility in terms of the spells that you have access to without putting cheaper spells into your deck and potentially disrupting your powerful big spell card draw tools. So I think this card is just like pretty universally powerful. Go into a ton of different decks. I do think it's pretty unlikely you see this in, say, Quest Mage, but in almost any other Mage deck, I can see this potentially finding a home, giving mages more of an ability to be proactive early on. It's just a very, very powerful thing in terms of enabling the tempo style of mages. And also, just giving you a bit cheaper big spells can certainly be very effective for the big spell deck. So, super good card. I expect to see it a lot of play. Next up, we have Rune of the Archmage. This is just a wild card. It's actually a standard card, but it's a crazy card. 9-cost, cast 20 mana worth of mage spells at enemies. So, this is very Puzzle Box-like, right? Puzzle Box was just cast 10 spells, or cast a bunch of spells. This is cast 20 mana worth of spells, so it can't go like quite as nuts, but it always hits enemies, so you're not going to be like fireballing yourself like you could with like Puzzle Box sort of things. It could literally cast Flurry 1,000 times. Whoa. But yeah, I mean, this can cast things that, like Arcane Intellect, things that don't necessarily target. It can cast secrets. This just seems like a super, super, super strong card. One thing that is worth noting, I discussed a lot in sort of previous reviews, and while I've been sort of experimenting with different decks on my stream, that there just weren't big spells for big spell decks, right? There were things like the Celestial Ink set, the draw spell pirate, a lot of things that like there's like the clumsy courier, a lot of things that care about having big spells, but not really many things that you actually do with them. Well, this is a big thing to do. This is extremely powerful, and I expect this to be a card that gets a lot of Reddit threads about how it's ruining the game, but I also expect it to be a ton of fun. So I will definitely be messing around with Rune of the Archmage big spell decks. Certainly something that I expect to enjoy. I don't know how good it'll be, right? I mean, Puzzle Box was crazy strong. Puzzle Box was actually a card that was like weirdly way more powerful than you'd really expect it to be, just because so many cards that you could potentially cast were just gonna give you a major advantage. This specifically is Mage Spell, so it can't do the kind of crazy like build a board stuff. There's only like Deep Freeze that makes minions, unlike being able to like Puzzle Box or Yogg or whatever, and like end up casting like Arbor up and Soul the Forest and all the all sorts of ridiculous things that could build gigantic boards for you. So it's mostly going to be like removal, card draw secrets, and 20 mana worth rather than like potentially any number worth. I think it's sweet. I'm definitely excited to play with it, and I do think it'll be powerful, but I don't think it'll be like nearly as like frustrating as something like Puzzle Box, because the range of potential results is much smaller. Except we have Amplified Snow Flurry. This is a 2-cost, 2/3 Battlecry. Your next hero power costs 0 and freezes the target. So this is really interesting because it's not just your next this turn, it's your next period. So, this you can play this turn 2 and bank a 0-cost freeze until you want it. And this can hit players. It's not freezes a minion, freezes the target. So like you could theoretically bank this against like a opposing deck that say maybe has weapons, and just boop, ping your face, and they can't hit you with a weapon, or can't hit you with whatever, like against like a Demon Hunter. Oh, this is the turn you're gonna be able to play like Inquisitor. Boop, get you. I'm curious how this works with Reckless Apprentice. Does Reckless Apprentice all trigger with this, so it all freezes if you were to use that? I'm not 100% sure. Or is it like just the first shot of Reckless Apprentice that will do that? I don't know, because Reckless Apprentice does seem to resolve individually, right? So my guess would just be the first thing it hits will get frozen, just because of the way the animation works. But yeah, I just think this is a pretty powerful card. I do like things like this and the reduced cost 1-drop that kind of make Mage interested in playing more to the board, and not just like I'm just going to sit back and draw cards and kill your stuff and then burn you out. Because by actually giving them good minions that encourage you to use them. But yeah, I think this is a very, very powerful card, and I'm quite curious to see if there's if we do see more elemental support down the line, because there used to be really good elemental support in Mage. Now there's not really. There's like just Grand Finale pretty much, and this is obviously be a very powerful tempo tool for really any Mage deck, but obviously the elemental tag can help it be more compelling there too. Next we have Siphon Mana, a 2-cost arcane spell. Deal 2 honorable kill, reduce the cost of spells in your hand by 1. I have seen a lot of people be like, why does Mage need more cost reduction? Well, this is sort of cost reduction. Obviously it is cost reduction if you get the honorable kill off, but it only reduces your hand and requires you to hit a minion for Xaxes. I do think this is potentially like a powerful card. I don't know if this like just fits into like a Quest Mage deck, because Quest Mage doesn't really have, I feel like, that many like slots. You have a bunch of card draw. You really want a bunch of card draw. Like you're not. I don't feel like you're replacing like Runed Orb with this, because Runed Orb is really powerful. Maybe you replace like Fireball, but you also just need more fire spells in order to actually ensure that you're actually getting your quest off. So like I feel like this is in most cases worse than Orb, right? It's only better than Orb if you have a hand with a significant number of cards in it and get an honorable kill off. Whereas Orb, like one of the main things about Orb that I think people underappreciate is Orb being redundant copies of either spell types you need in order to complete your quest, or card draw when you run out of stuff. So I just don't really feel like it's likely to be that great of a card in Spell Mage. I'm totally going to be wrong. Cost reduction, as I've said, is extremely powerful. So maybe there are like ways to find a spot for this. It is worth noting that pre-quest completion, you can use this to kill like your own Wand Thief to trigger it, which is I think hugely important. Being able to ensure that you can actually get it to go off yourself, either with Wand Thief or with something off of like Primordial Studies. But yeah, I do think this is definitely a powerful card. I'm not like convinced that it goes into existing builds of Quest Mage for the reasons that I explained, but maybe it goes into like Mozaki Mage, where you care less about spell types and you have like maybe a little bit more flexibility, and you care more about the cost reduction because you're trying to do so many things in one turn. That's really what your deck is about. So that's kind of my thought. I've seen people saying like, oh, it's ridiculous, it's busted. It's like, well, I think it's good, but I think the rest of the deck is already probably more busted. So I'm not sure it necessarily has a spot. Next up we have Magister Dawn Grasp. 8 costs. Battlecry, recast a spell from each spell school you've cast this game with the hero power Arcane Burst. Deal 1, honorable kill, gain +2. I feel like this is pretty bad. Like this feels like it wants to go into a big spell deck, right? Because it recasts a spell from each spell school. So you want to play high impact cards from each of the potential spell schools. Like this is clearly awful in like Quest Mage, right? Like you're not looking to like recast like a Flurry, a Hot Streak, and a Runed Orb. This in like a big spell mage deck where you're casting like Deep Freeze, Flame Strike, Mark of Cthulhu, and like I don't know, something. That's pretty strong, right? Like that's the thing, is that I don't feel like this goes into any of the good mage decks that exist now. But if it potentially goes into like in like a big spell type mage deck, it's like okay, this is now giving me like 20 mana worth of stuff. Again, as I've reiterated many times, I feel like it is unlikely that style of deck, a slower deck that's like leaning more on casting like these big spells, is able to be competitive in a world where the quests still exist. I feel like a big spell deck is just going to get absolutely decimated by either Quest Mage or Quest Warlock. So you get to turn 8, you recast like some things that generate some board or whatever, and they're like, okay, take 50 fatigue damage or whatever. I think that if this has a home anywhere, it's in big spell Mage, because of the nature of the Battlecry. You specifically want to be playing only high impact cards from each of the spell schools in order to be in sort of the Dawn Grasp recast pool. So when their Battlecry goes off, you get a lot of value from it. The hero power I feel like is kind of incidental. It's sort of weird to me, because this doesn't feel like the sort of thing that wants to go into, hero power mage, right? Like maybe this is you're playing like hero power big spell mage or whatever, and you have like wildfires, and I don't know. You can like recast wildfire, get even more triggers. Your arcane burst, you like Reckless Apprentice, trigger arcane burst on a million different things, blow someone up for like 5,000 damage because it keeps getting honorable kill +2. I don't know. But yeah, I feel like, again, this is a big capper type card for a deck that is already full of big cards, which makes it very unlikely to be effective in a metagame that doesn't feel like it's likely to be friendly to big, slow stuff. So we have Build a Snowman, which gives you a 3/3 Snowman that freezes, and adds Build a Snow Brute, which I think is a 6/6 Snow Brute that freezes. Then it gives you like build like a, I don't know, Snow Titan. I don't actually know what it is, but I think it's kind of like a Pyros. Right, this gives you multiple stages of frost spells that make dudes that freeze. Do you want to build a snowman? Probably not. You're not a character in Frozen. You don't care that much about frost spells. Maybe this is good in, it does give you something that is like in a frost deck, right? That isn't just a purely interactive thing against, opponents who have minions. Like I remember trying to build like Frost Mage, right? That cared about playing frost cards. It was looking to use like the Dungeoneer. All frost cards and like take advantage that way of the Dungeoneer itself being a fairly powerful card in the right context. I don't think, and like this if you're trying to if you want to build that style of deck, is actually pretty good because it gives you something that enables you to have like frost things that you're drawing that aren't either deep freeze or like things that freeze your opponent's board, because that was basically what like that deck got to play with. This being something which is like able to be proactive rather than reactive as a frost spell, if you care about that, is cool. But it's like a slow incremental value card. The value of this is A, it's a proactive frost spell. B, it's like giving you 3 minions for 1 card effectively. But again, like in talking about the likelihood of slow incremental value stuff being powerful in a metagame with both heroes and quests feels pretty difficult for this sort of card to be competitive. You can definitely like play two. One of the things compared to Pyros, right? Like you could play like late in the game, you could play Build a Snowman, Build a Snow Brute in 1 turn, which is nice. But again, like this is a world where people are Quest Mage, Quest Warlock, and Quest Warrioring you. It's tough to sit and play an incremental value game. Next up, we have Belinda Stonehearth. 6 cost 5/5, but she's never that, or very rarely at least. Battlecry, draw 2 spells. Swap their costs with this minion's stats. This is a cool card. This is a sweet card for like a big spell deck. Clearly, you want to play this in a deck with a bunch of expensive things because it is 6 cost, draw 2, and it is potentially, going to give you your 9 or 10 cost cards for 5 mana and make you have like a 6 cost 9/10. But yeah, this card is sweet. This card, like if there is a decent big spell deck, this is I think a huge portion of why that deck exists, because it does kind of everything you want. It gives you, a big threat your opponent needs to deal with. It gives you card advantage, and it gives you cost reduction on those big spells. Like this you can play this and then be able to play like 2 giant things on turn 10. So yeah, super sweet. Really like this card. Definitely want to try building Big Spell Mage, and then we'll lose horribly to all the quest decks. Next we have ArcaneBrilliance. 4 cost. Add a copy of a 7, 8, 9, and 10 cost spell in your deck to your hand. So this is, again, a very sweet card for Big Spell Mage. It's like the entire set. I feel like I've been complaining there aren't enough good big spells since they started printing, cards that cared about big spells, like the beginning of this year. And now they're just, all of them are in this set. Every single one of them. And they're probably not going to be good enough because of quests. But yeah, this, this is obviously, if you're playing a deck that's full of expensive things, spending 4 mana in the middle turns of the game to put a bunch of stuff in your hand is going to be difficult. And also, a card that effectively is a draw for in a deck with a bunch of expensive stuff can be difficult to use. That said, the big spell decks have Deep Fathom. I forget what it is. The 4 cost 3/4 that draws a spell from your deck and you gain armor equal to its cost. That is a card that enables you to actually play cards like this and not just be dead. Against aggressive decks, at least. You'll still be dead against quest decks. Don't get me wrong. But you can actually like have good defensive tools to buy you time to actually get to your big cards. And specifically, this being a copy of is really relevant. This is not like draw them. This is a copy, so you don't like lose stuff like Belinda Stonehearth being able to swap for them. You can generate, you can use 2 copies of this and not like be very unlikely to, actually get value out of them. You can actually play primarily spells as your deck's win condition, and not just like easily run out, because, you actually get a ton of value off of your stuff like, Deep Freeze, or the Rune of the Archmage, or the big spell, which we'll get to momentarily. Pretty powerful, I think. I think this is a very, very sweet card, and looking forward to trying it and never winning. Speaking of big spells, Iceblood Tower, 10 cost spell. At the end of your turn, cast another spell from your deck, lasts 3 turns. So, obviously, in a deck full of big spells, you're likely to be casting very big, powerful things over and over and over. So if your deck is stuff like Mask of Cthulhu, Deep Freeze, Flame Strike, Rune of the Archmage, seems sweet, right? Seems like you're going to do some really, really big, powerful, impactful things. And this one is not a copy. It's cast another spell from your deck. So, and you can Iceblood Tower into a second copy of Iceblood Tower. So yeah, this is pretty sweet, and this is definitely a big spell that is worth spending a ton of mana on. Obviously, you need to be very, like for a lot of these big spell things, you need to be very, very careful about not including chief spells, because if you like spend 10 on Iceblood Tower and it casts Ignite, you're gonna feel real dumb. And you also want it to be things that like target opposing stuff, because it's auto casting them. Super cool card. I like it a lot. Definitely excited to have crazy Iceblood Tower games, playing a bunch of super powerful things. And I play my Iceblood Tower. It casts like Deep Freeze, and then I take 50 fatigue from Quest Warlock. And last, but not least, we have Mass Polymorph. 7 cost, transform all minions into 1/1 sheep. This is clearly a really powerful card, in certain matchups. Any opponent that's trying to play like big minions, Mass Polymorph, really powerful. Anyone who's got like Death Rattles, Mass Polymorph can be really powerful. It is 7 cost, which is obviously quite expensive, and it's very bad against, say, Swarm decks. But it's a pretty rough card to play like in, say, an Iceblood Tower deck, right? It's like, I'm spend 10 mana on an empty board, and it's gonna try and cast Mass Polymorph and do nothing. So I feel like this is not a card that just goes into big spell decks. I feel like this is more of a card that is like a situational tool that you play in particular metagames where lots of big minions / death rattles and such are popular. If there's like Res Priest, right? If there's like big demon hunter, all these sorts of things, Mass Polymorph feels like it can be very, very effective. Proving ground decks, that kind of thing. It can be very good against like the like stealth beast druids, right? Like any of those sort of things can be a very powerful card. It sure is bad against Quest Mage. Haha! I will spend 7 mana and turn your quest reward into a 1/1. Again, feels very, very metagame dependent, and not something I would just kind of naturally include. especially my big spell decks with Iceblood Tower, because I don't want to be like randomly casting this on a board that it's just not good. I think you'll want things that are actually like generically good, like the Deep Freezes and Mask of Cthulhu's, things like that of the world. Or Rune of the Archmage or whatever. You're gonna cast this off of Rune of the Archmage when you actually built like a big board off of like Deep Freezes from the first few parts of it. And like, oh no, and then it's tragic. I guess you can't really do that because that's 22 mana, but you do it off of one at least. Like I said, metagame card, not like any kind of like auto include, but certainly interesting to give a way to deal with giant boards that isn't just freezing them repeatedly. Well, that is our last card in Mage from this set, and I think it's pretty clear that one of the design goals from this set was to not give more power to Quest Mage style decks. There is, of course, the one honorable kill discount card, but like I mentioned, it's not clear that that's like a card that there's room for in those style of decks. But again, if there is, I think it's largely because they have the ability to trigger it on their own by playing with Wand Thief. It does feel like there's a lot of support for Big Spell Mage, because that has been very lacking for a long time. And again, I feel like I'm excited that that exists, but I am not particularly hopeful that it will be effective. I do think that the metagame is not one that seems like it is likely to be able to support that style of deck being successful. And in large part, as I've said many, many times, I feel like that is largely due to the quests and the fact that any kind of slower, more controlling style of deck can't really hope to actually answer the Mage and Warlock in particular before they just get exploded. So I am hopeful, but not terribly optimistic.